Hello and welcome back. It's good for you to see me. Um, where are we? It is April 27, 2020, day 7,412 of the coronavirus lockdown here in Brooklyn. And things are going as good as can be expected. Hope everybody's doing okay. Anywho, back at it. A little bit of house cleaning. We are into the D's in terms of last names. So A, B, C, D. That's 26 letters, 22%, 273 responses. We're about, say, 42 responses in, maybe 43, somewhere in there. We're deep into the D's. So in the 40s, probably high 30s to 40s of responses, and everyone nailed. I did not expect this going into this, that I would just literally get just bam, 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 bam. It's like whack-a-mole, but I'm hitting them all, and the game's broke because the mole just sits there, and I just keep whacking it. I feel good. There's nothing but good here. So anyway, what else is new? Hair. It's getting a little, who cares? Who needs a barber? You got a hat. Who needs a barber? I'm might even shave at some point. Who knows? Anyway, it doesn't matter. And everything's over. Everything's done. This is just for the aliens when they sweep up in 4 million years before before they make a home with the cockroaches. No, that's defeatist. The cockroaches are going to die too. Anyway, what else is new? Nothing worth talking about. So let's get back to it. Let's get back to God's work here. Let's see, where are we? Making sure the thingamajiggy is working here for everyone. Boink. Boink, it seems to be working. I'm going to go. Okay, so next on our list, we have David Deutsch. And, boy, he's a physicist at Oxford. I should talk to my friend John because he probably knows this guy because my friend John looks about as similar to David Deutsch as you can, which is not easy because he's a unique looking individual. My friend John went to Oxford probably around the same time. I wouldn't be surprised if he knew him. I'm sure obviously he knows of him, but anyway, that's milk under the spilt milk under the bridge. David Deutsch is a physicist at the University of Oxford. He's an author of The Beginning of Infinity. Ouch. I'm completely sober, and I'm aided only by my own razor sharp corpus callosum. That probably shouldn't last long, but we'll see. Author of The Beginning of Infinity, that already hurts. Recipient of the Edge Computation Science Prize. Beginning of Infinity. It's like your Aunt Edna's ass. Goes on forever, and the beginning of it seems like infinity. Okay. I want to scroll up and then scroll down. Are the ways... Oh boy. Okay. I have to dig back into my minor in philosophy that I got from, I don't know what it is now, but at the time it was the 274th best philosophy program in the entire Midwest. Anyway, are the ways qualia relate to computation, creativity to free will, risk to probability, Morality to epistemology, all the same question. Jesus, Maud. Yes, next question. Well, wait a second here. Okay. All right, let's tear this apart. Is this even showing? Give me a second here. Is this even showing up for you people? It's showing up just perfectly. So I will go back to are the ways qualia. Now qualia, if I remember right from my 274th best school, is quality is kind of like the subjective feeling that we have. Like we have the color red. When we see the color red, like that's the feeling that we have when we see red. That would be a qualia. When we feel pain because we stubbed a toe, that's a qualia. It's our own inner subjective of a inner subjectivity. I don't know, like the landscape of conscious being, whatever. Okay, are the ways that relates to computation. Okay. I might be starting to understand maybe where he's going here. So we could say maybe inherent in the qualia is this is almost factually has to be is an incredible amount of computation, just because we've got nerve endings, nerve cells that are relaying information back to our, up through our brain and different portions of our brain, and out of that arises somehow. Some would say just emerges. Some would say it's an actual thing, but that arises qualia from a bunch of computation. Not everybody would agree with that, but the people that would not agree with that are wrong. Okay, are the ways qualia relate to computation? Creativity to free will. Oh, Jesus, Maud. David Deutsch. This was not an easy one to start on. Okay. Wow. He might get the record for the hardest one. Creativity to free will. Risk to probability. Morality to epistemology. I can't remember what half these damn words mean. What does to mean? Isn't epistemology the study of kind of like the study of language, or the study of, or not language, but the study of knowledge, of acquiring knowledge? Isn't that epistemology? Just acquire, all the same question. Oh, this might just be one where I can't even bullshit an answer. That's impressive, because I can bullshit. Are the ways qualia relate to computation? Okay, so what I'm seeing on the first part is I can kind of visualize that, because it's like, okay, there's a ton of computation that's just going on through our bodies to, go like this. There's nerve cells, nerve endings that communicate this, run up through my brain, got receptors that all of a sudden they're weighing. You get all these different weights in the brain, and all of a sudden the weights that are related to these things are it's getting overloaded. So all of a sudden from that you get this kind of whatever tipping point or whatever, where it's like the weighting, it's kind of like the same weighting that they do in machine learning and stuff like that, I think, or at least that's how they, whatever, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. All it is there's a lot of computation going on, a lot of synapses getting loaded up and doing the math, and you do the sums. There's something in their head that's doing the sum of this, the sums, and then out of that sums becomes the qualia of I can feel this, and it feels like something. So computation leads to qualia by some direct slash indirect, effable slash ineffable method, or just it just happens. So, are the ways that this feeling relates to the underlying computation? So, is the relationship between those two things, the quality and the computation, creativity to free will? Are we? Okay. Man, you're bringing in free will, which is a ridiculously complex thing to even think about. And nobody can even define it in a way that makes sense. And it doesn't even really make sense. I mean, I'm not. Don't get me wrong. It's great. It's just this is a freaking creativity and free will. So he could be just saying creativity is kind of it's like the human experience, the human spin, the human je ne sais quoi, je ne sais pas, je ne sais pas. It's the human version. It's how we manifest free will in a certain context. It's a certain type of manifestation of free will. So maybe, okay, the qualia could be a certain type of manifestation of computation, and we know it has to arise somehow out of computation, because we know there's computation going on. There's computation going on with this. There's there's math going on all over the place. So that the relationship of that to qualia could that be similar to the relationship of this idea of free will? And let's not explain free will too much, but because that's a rabbit hole. But let's just say, okay, so then creativity could be a human conscious manifestation at a certain level of just the idea of free will, of just like, okay, we could go here, 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 and when we do that with our minds engaged, jumping from place to place, or going on an intellectual hike, or what you will, is that just kind of a manifestation of the deeper level meta deeper level of the fact that there just is such a thing as free will? So is it the same? Are the relationships of those two things similar? So I could kind of see where he's going with this. Okay. Oh man, you bring free will in there and you're just okay. Risk to probability. I see kind of where he's going with this. This is interesting. Okay. So probability is it's just a mathematical, it's just a thing that's there in the universe. Probability, you got Schrodinger's cat. He's 68% dead. 32% alive. So do you open the box to, make sure you get some air? Or do you take a chance and so risk being just kind of a human manifestation of, or at least we're going to call it a human manifestation because we'll keep AI and all that shit out of it for right now. Risk is the human manifestation of probability, which is a fundamentally, kind of a more fundamental nature. And morality to epistemology. This is another one. Okay, morality is how the rules by which we structure personal and interpersonal behavior amongst agents in a society. Okay. Because you could say that morality evolves as we discover more about humanity, more about humanity's place in the world, more about the world itself. Morality kind of has to change when you discover more, which is why it's kind of the built-in Achilles heel of religions. If you take them at that their morality is just right for all times, you either got to interpret, you got to do a lot of interpretation, or if they don't leave it open for interpretation, you got to do a lot of revisions. Because Bronze Age morality doesn't do a whole lot good in 2020. So anyway, sidetrack. A bit, whatever, doesn't matter. Okay, so when you say in there, morality is kind of like, so I'll say it's a subset of just the study of knowledge, the study of, of gaining more knowledge. So that makes sense. It's the human, one particular human manifestation of what happens when you gain more knowledge. And then you apply that to human, that's morality. Are they all the same question? Are the human Are these just the human flavors of what the universe just does? Are these the human flavors of what the universe just does? Well, if you're going to say the universe just does epistemology, then are you kind of saying the universe just learns about itself? That's just, it does that. That's what it does? Because if you're saying that, you're saying something very big and specific about the universe. Noctum, blah, 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 whatever, Neo. Know thyself, that's what the universe does. Risk to probability, so play dice with thyself, that's what the universe does. I mean, the free will one still. That's just, I'm having a, which one of these is not alike? Free will is never like anything else. I'm skipping that for a second. Quality relate to computation. I mean, that's an easier one to say. Yeah, the universe. That's what the universe does. It computes. That's, some people might just say that is the universe. It's basically, that's what it's made out of. At its base, computation is our subjective feeling of qualia, subjective feeling of pain, pleasure, release, contentment. Is that just another flavor of, the specific human manifestation of underlying computation that just, it's how it does? Are these all the same question? I feel like he's implying that there's nothing new under the sun. that the human, everything that we consider to be unique about humanity, and it's like we're getting less and less special all the time. It's like we used to think the sun was the only, or the sun was the only star in the sky, and the sun was special, and the earth was special, and there was nothing else like this. And then we found out, oh no, that's not true, and there's stars everywhere, and there's planets like the earth everywhere, and so it's like we get less and less special. And now is he just saying we're all the things that we think are specialty humans that make us human, that are just, they're just flavors of things that just, this is what the universe does. It just does this, and you're just getting the human flavor of it, but it's nothing. At the same time, it does imply a strong connection, at least in certain terms, because it's like, yeah, we're doing the same thing the universe does. We're just doing it in our own human flavor. I feel like saying yes to qualia and computation, risk and probability, morality and epistemology. I feel like saying yes to that. I'm just trying to, creativity to free will. It's difficult because free will is such a, if you would take that out, if that one wouldn't have been in there, I think I would have just been like, oh yeah, of course, yeah, that makes sense. But it's the whole free will thing. It's just like, I don't even know how you could define it in a way that makes sense. So it's throwing a wrench in this whole thing. But he's also saying, are these all the same question? So you could take that to mean that the relationship between these things is the same type of relationship. So the relationship to qualia is the relationship that qualia has to computation is the same relationship that risk has to probability. Okay, that's one level of being the same question. So it's like the same relationship. But you could also say, are are these same, if they all have the same type of relationship, does that relationship, do those things actually boil down to kind of the same thing? Like, an actual kind of a single element, uh, a single a single thing on which we're spinning our own human web, but it's out of it's out of the silk of a universal spider. It's a bad metaphor, but we'll just go with it for a minute. I mean, I'm not sure which way he's trying to take this, but well, if that's the case, we could just say our computation, free will, probability, and epistemology, all under beneath everything the same thing. We're taking different views of the same elephant. My brain gone. I think my brain is not even capable of encroaching upon that idea. I will say that let's answer the question in the one that I can maybe have some. I want to say yes, but I'm still just like, epistemology, isn't that just like, okay, the study of knowledge of it's like, if we're saying the universe just does that, and then the human version of that is morality. Boy, that's, and I can't look shit up either because that would be cheating. And if I started doing that, this thing would take decades instead of more decades. God, this is this the first one I'm not going to get completely and totally right? Soda isn't going to get you to answer this question. All right. I am going to say, yes, they are. I'm also going to say that may be one of those things that are true but can't be proven. So how do we know it's true? Maybe you could never develop a formula for proving this idea, but it so then how could you say it's true? I don't know. I feel like there's a good chance that it's true, but in order to prove it, we couldn't be human because it's so far away from how we conceptualize meaning, experience. You know, it's like we it's like we would no longer, even if we had qualia, we couldn't do this operation. We'd have to be able to step out. So we'd have to. Christ. This is right at the intersection of philosophy and AI stuff and badminton. I'm going to say yes, but if we're in this, if you're in the system that you're talking about this, you can never prove this to be true. You got to be able to step outside. Like we can maybe prove this to ET if we went to ET's planet and be like, oh, they're just doing the same tango that's the universal tango. It's just their version of it. But we couldn't do it intersubjectively. We couldn't do it or intrasubjectively, I guess, or we couldn't do it even in our own species. We couldn't, because we couldn't rip away the qualia to subject it to investigation. So the answer is yes. We can't ever prove it that it applies to humans as we are humans. Maybe we could. Yeah. Yes, and you'll never know. Okay, all the rest of these should be easy. After that one, wow. Yeah, I'm not surprised that that's the type of question I would get from you, you lousy. So the answer, David Deutsch, to your last question of are the ways qualia relate to computation, creativity, to free will, risk to probability, morality, to epistemology, all the same question is yes. We could never prove it, or everything would just poof in a puff of logic. But yes, yep, you're onto something there. Okay. Whew. Next up, we have Keith Devlin, who is a mathematician. Quick aside, I was terrible at math. My friend tells me he thinks it's just because I wasn't taught well. I think it's just because I was terrible at math, but either way. The only thing I was good at was geometry, because I could kind of just guess the answers. I was like, this is 9 and this is 5. Oh, that's got to be 11, whatever. I could just look and guess, but I couldn't visualize math very well. Whatever, regardless. Keith Devlin, mathematician, executive director of the H-Star Institute at Stanford. Excuse me. Author of Finding Fibonacci. Keith Devlin's last question is, can we develop a procedure that, in principle, would tell us whether or not our universe is a simulation, analogous to the way the now proven Poincare conjecture can tell us the universe's shape? Well, I am not familiar with that conjecture, so I'm just going to have to ignore that. Else I'd have to look it up and then just destroy the whole wave function of this thing. So, can we develop? Let me make sure this is still. Yeah. Point. Can we develop a procedure that, in principle, would tell us whether or not a universe is a simulation? Are they going up in difficulty? It's just like, is this designed like an IQ test where they give you a little confidence with the easy ones and then oh shit. Yeah, I'm gonna need some liquid intelligence here pretty quick. Can we develop a procedure that, in principle, would tell us whether or not our universe is a simulation? Well, let's forget about the procedure for now. In principle, what would be a difference that we could see whether our universe is a simulation? The hell do you mean by simulation? Because does that mean something different than created, like, the Men in Black, where it's just like, or whatever. I mean, it's different than, like, some ET created a universe in third grade science class and we're the result. That wouldn't be a simulation. That would be a real universe. We're just would be a little miffed about the scale of the whole thing if we saw it that way. A simulation would be The Sims writ large. Or whatever. How could a character in The Sims, The Truman Show, okay? How did Jim Carrey figure out it was all Hollywood lights and magic? It's not even quite that. It's how do you draw a proper analogy for a simulation? How would a character in The Sims figure out he's a character in The Sims? It seems ridiculous when you say it that way, but throw it another way. Well, it's the same thing. Let's just rephrase it. How would we, whatever, be able to tell whether or not this whatever is actually interfacing with a actual reality versus it's just a lot of computation, going back to Mr. David Deutsch, happening on some kind of hard drive somewhere. A really good hard drive. What would the fingerprints of if you're going to program a simulation, is there any fingerprints of any evidence left that you've programmed the simulation in the simulation? Is there date stamps? Is there funny notes? Is there a I mean, if somebody wanted to make it obvious that you were in a simulation, maybe But if they didn't, if they didn't want to they didn't want to make it, you know, Jesus Christ, man. Too sober for this. This is tough. I probably, if I knew exactly what was going on with that Poincar's conjecture, that might help me. But I can't use that. So, you know, all we have, even though it just seems like we're out there touching reality and of course this is real, blah, 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 you know, but all we have are interfaces to we can't even say it's reality because to say it's reality is we're presuming so much that we don't even know. We have these senses, these sensory organs, and we have these senses. We have our sense of touch, our sense of smell, our sense of taste, our vision, our hearing, other feelings, intuitions, stuff like that. But all of these are kind of like interfaces into what we want to call reality, but we can't ever get outside of that interface because it's the interface. That's what we have. You know? So we can't even we can't even honestly say we have a good handle on even the reality that we think is there, because it's just all we know is through these interfaces, which who knows what they're lying about. I mean, how evolution has shaped our interface just to be able to survive down generations, and is ignoring 98% of all of the, it's ignoring the dark matter and the dark energy and the using that as a metaphor even, it's just like, it's all wrapped up and screwed around and who knows what evolution has done to even, it's just given us the show we need to get to tomorrow. It might have almost no relationship to what the actual underneath reality is. And even underneath all of that reality still could be a simulation. How do we tell? I mean, if the simulator wanted us to know, I suppose you could make something so, excuse me, like a big, something in the universe that you're just like so a cluster of galaxies 10 billion years apart that you just look at them and it just spells out the formula for pi or something, or is a perfect circle, like something that it's just like this could not happen. The real the real watch on the beach, the real William Paley's, shitty argument. Or was it Paley's? Whatever. But that's just if you wanted to. If you didn't want to, if you, the simulation didn't want to. How did Neo find out? He got the pill. But I can't think of any. I can't think of any way, even in principle, that we could ever well, okay. Maybe through experience. Maybe we get a better answer to that question when we start simulating more and more things and more complex things. And what happens when we create simulations that are detailed enough to have beings in them that can ask the question? Could we ever simulate a universe complex enough that it would have intelligent agents able to ask that question? And would their answer have any? Well, we know that they're a simulation, but they don't. But then we say if we know, that means that there's some type of interface between ourselves and the simulation. We can look at the simulation. You know, we can look in the fish tank, and we can look at what these fish are swimming around, and then we can look at seeing that one of the fish one day said, "I wonder if this is really the real world. If we're just being simulated." It almost implies that if we were simulated, there would have to be a type of interface between the simulated and the simulator. What else would it mean to be simulated? So if there is an interface at some level between the simulated and the simulator, then is there any way to bug that phone line? I'm going to, just to make sure that I'm 44 for 44, that procedure cannot be developed because if he doesn't want to show his face, the simulator, he doesn't have to. But if we wanted to get close, we start simulating complex things that can ask that question and see what they say. and whatever their answer is, we're screwed. That's a son of a bitch, but still answered it perfectly. Put it into a formula. It's all dumb. I don't want to do the math. That's details. I'm big picture. I don't want to do the math of that, but of course not. It's not possible. No procedure is possible. It's not possible in theory, but if we start developing simulations ourselves and start talking to them, then we'll find out it really doesn't matter, because if they're having a good time driving down the beach, you know, who gives a shit? Okay, so the answer to that is no. But if you want to get a concrete no, just start simulating stuff and then asking them the same thing. And then you ask them the same thing, and poof, the whole thing goes away. The simulation goes away because you can't ask them, because it just goes poof. It's like the way function collapses, the cat dies or runs away or whatever. Schrodinger has a stroke. So no is your answer, Kevin. Definitely. Wow. Okay, I'm gonna try one more, and then I'm gonna have a drink, because I need brain juice. Okay, next one is Jared Diamond. I know Mr. Jared Diamond. He's a professor. He's got probably has his PhD. That means he's Dr. Diamond. Hello, I'm Dr. Diamond. I'll be checking your colon. Anyway, Jared Diamond, and I am familiar with some of his work. He's an very interesting person. Guns, Germs, and Steel, book he wrote, and I believe also The Third Chimpanzee, I believe. But Guns, Germs, and Steel was a very influential, very interesting book I read a long time ago. Anyway, Jared Diamond is professor of geography, University of California, Los Angeles. Many of you know it by its pseudonym, UCLA. UCLA, author of Upheaval. He's got a new book that I'm not familiar with. Got to go read that son of a beach. His last question, Jared Diamond's last question is, why is there such widespread public opposition to science and scientific reasoning in the United States, the world leader in every major branch of science? Well, I wonder if Dr. Diamond, Jared Diamond has considered the idea as nonsensical as it may seem at first glance, that the reason there is such opposition to science, and the reason the U.S. is the world leader in every major branch of science, which I don't know if that's really true, but if that is true, then hey, good on us, because I feel like we've been losing ground in places, but we'll take it as true enough. Lies worth believing. Anyway, back to my original tangent. It may be possible that there is such opposition in the U.S. and we're a world leader, and it's the same soup that cooks both those things. I'm just thinking of the idea of the kind of middle finger that the U.S. There is a little bit of that attitude, and it could lead to opposition to institutions. It could lead to specific science scientifically, and it also could potentially be the same thing that kind of leads like a buckaroo type of um, like, oh shit, that's no, I know what's going on. I'm the guy that can figure this out. I'm the greater fool that's gonna figure this out. It's not a well put together thought, but it isn't out of the realm of possibility that there is something underlying whatever the cooking is in this place that actually does that. But to get more grounded, more back to it, um, and I will say yes. I mean, like I'll give one example. I'll give a personal example, which I don't know if this is going to explain anything, but um, when I was young, I was raised very religiously. And when I was probably 11 or 12, after church, we had like this Bible study. All the boys got together and did Bible study, whatever. And I remember, might not even been that old, might have been like 10, somewhere in there, 10, 11. But we had the Bible study leader, whatever, and it's a very conservative religious thing. So, and literally had like got out these like posters or whatever, pieces of paper or something. Got them from one of these, I don't know, Jack Crick or I don't even know. But anyway, upshot was there is on one side you got two castles, all right, and on one side, on one castle, and the two castles are kind of like they're fighting each other, they're sending arrows at each other and stuff like that. One castle is Christianity. That's the castle, and it's got and it's got the Bible, and it's got family, and it's got everything that you want to put together in this thing, all the good things, all the marriage and family and good things, and underneath it all is like the Bible and then Genesis and all that kind of stuff. And the other castle is, I don't know what they named it exactly. I forget that exactly, but it was basically like it was all of the bad shit that was trying to defeat Christianity in the Bible, and it was the scientists, and it was evolution, and somewhere lurking in the background there was Satan, and it was literally just this, there is a war for your soul, and the Bible and Christianity is on one side, and all these abortionists, and these scientists and these evolutionists. Whoops, that went out. I'm gonna still go with this. They're on the other side, and so I guess I'm just kind of underlining his point. And this, I don't think this was necessarily how many people were brought up. At least I'd hope not, and I'd hope the education of the area has changed a little bit today. But who knows? I mean, that was a while ago. But still, that was what I was taught. That's what we were taught. That there was basically a war on for your soul, and the scientists were in league with the devil, and when you're taught that kind of stuff, is it that surprising that there's that there's opposition? But that was just obviously just anecdotal. That's my N of one story. That was probably expedited my my exodus from the church. But anyway, to answer the question as presented, well, another way to answer that is, well, I mean, I've kind of hinted at it, but why is the U.S. so religious? Is maybe another way to answer that, because there's another part of it is that there's another flavor of it is that like people love science, the idea of science. Even people that are a lot of people that are very, you know, consider themselves very religious also love science. It's just like they love their science or their version of science, or they love it when scientists, they love science, but sometimes they're just, the scientists are just wrong because it has to be that way. I could say from a very just looking at it from a, you know, there are different ways to look at religion if you are raised religiously. One of those ways is to have more of a literal worldview. Or I'm sorry, like a literal view of the historical accuracy of the Bible and the, you know, and here's something to think about. I almost respect, in a way, I almost respect the people that actually kind of deny science and are religious and just say, oh no, this doesn't work, because at least then they have a worldview which is coherent, which is internally kind of coherent. Like if you just deny everything in the world that conflicts with the Bible, just, you know, and just say everything that conflicts with the Bible is wrong. So if scientists are saying the world's 4 billion years old and we evolved from this and that and stuff like that, it's like, no, that's not right. It can't be right. It was Adam and Eve and it's 6,000 years old and that's the way it is. I mean, it's at least somewhat internally consistent. Obviously, then it flies in the face of the reality that we understand. But, you know, I don't understand how someone can be, and I know like Kenneth Miller, I think, wrote a book on this, you know, because he's like a Catholic and he's also an evolutionist, so he kind of squares that circle. I don't know how you square that circle. It just doesn't make any sense to me. So the people that are honestly, that are, you know, that are like, oh, well, I'm a religious, but I also accept the scientific, you know, consensus, but then I also believe that Jesus rose from the dead and all this kind of stuff, is like, that doesn't, I mean, that's just, I don't know how you mix those paints together and get anything but just a feces shade of brown. That doesn't make any sense to me. So I think that there is a vibrant biblical literalism that is still alive in the United States, which is probably not nearly as live. And part of that, I think, is because at least there's this idea of there is competition. There's churches compete, religions compete in the U.S. because it is a competitive thing, and so because there's more competition, it's just like it's a bigger, more vibrant marketplace. So that may be why the U.S. is more religious. Also, we got, you know, populated by kind of the religious cast-offs of other countries, and a lot of people came here because they wanted to be able to practice their religion in their way. So we were given the Constitution, Bill of Rights, all of those documents by some of the most far-seeing and least religious people of the time, but we were settled by some of the most religious people of the time, and they, you know, they're gonna do what they do. They're gonna do what they do, you know. I think part of the reason was that there is no state religion in the U.S., and so you can compete. You can, work hard to find them souls that you're going to save for only 10% of their income. And so, because of that more vibrant marketplace, more people are religious. Also, because they came over religious, and it's not that easy to change. You're going to get that. So that's there's some reason there that explain the fact that it's a more religious place, and in a more religious place, I think honestly it's going to go kind of hand in hand with opposition to science. I mean, that depends on the tenets of your religion, of course. If we were settled by Buddhists, I don't think it would be that big a deal. Um, you're talking about religious systems and religious beliefs that are kind of trying to say, hey, we got the answers. These are the answers, and that's going to rub up against a scientific way of saying we got the answers that um, you know they are not noma. They are overlapping magisteria at least in America. The question of whether religion and science are overlapping magisteria is going to be somewhat context dependent, or it's going to be dependent on the facts on the ground. What religion are you talking about? We happen to have a religious flavor of religion that is not very amenable to the idea of the noma. That's another way to look at it. Buddhism, fine with that noma idea. Certain Protestant and those types of religious attitudes not so cool with the whole noma. Render unto Caesar what is Caesar, but there was never render unto Newton what is Newton. Is there anything else to say? Maybe you could look at it as kind of cool that you can have you can hold a society together that has such diametric differences that, I don't know what the fabric is, and it's probably completely unraveling and will be done if we ever make it out of this coronavirus. We'll just, just do ourselves in. But maybe it's kind of impressive that you can have this incredible kind of religious fervor would be one word for it, but also just observance and taking it seriously enough that you have to discount a certain amount of the science that also there's just a little bit of rebellion, maybe just in the water, so to speak, of America. It's kind of built on that a little bit, right? Just built on a little bit of rebellion, a little bit of saying, what, screw that, And maybe that middle finger every once in a while gets pointed towards science, and maybe that isn't necessarily always a bad thing. It's not like science is the be-all and end-all. It is a very powerful tool, but it doesn't always get things right, and it needs a check like everything else needs a check on it. And it's not like scientists aren't swimming around in their own ideologies as well. And it's not like they're not, what is the word? I can't remember the word, but the idea is things like identifying the sinner and identifying the good and the bad and the the way to live one's life and the story you have to tell and stuff like that. Those are typically religious feelings, but they also spring up outside of religion. They're beneath religion, and they also spring up in people in other ways, not just religiously. So I don't know where I was going with that, but sometimes I think religion tends to corral those base needs to categorize people and to call them sinners, and I don't know. Anyway, so Dr. Diamond, Jared Diamond, the answer to your last question, which is, why is there such widespread public opposition to science and scientific reasoning in the United States, the world leader in every major branch of science? Possibly because that middle finger, that is grown and perpetuated in the water, and we create that middle finger in America that just kind of lets like screw it to everything. So it gets pointed at science, and we're like, what the hell are you doing giving the middle finger to science? And then that middle finger, if it's in scientists, it says, you know what, screw the status quo, we're going to make something better, we're going to do something better. So maybe it's just part of the broth that actually helps us to become the world leader in every major branch of science. Also, the other answer to that is religion's big here, and the type of religion we have here doesn't lend itself to the idea of the noma, of the non-overlapping magisteria, very well. Tends to be more literalist. And also religion's here because we got competition, we got markets, we got a market for religion, and so it's competition, so it just makes itself bigger than it would be in other areas where you've got like a state religion, and it's just it just dies down because it's not doing much anymore. So that's your answer. Interesting question. I am 46 for 46, and I'm taking a break. Hello, everyone. I'm back. And I brought friends because I was having a bit of a struggle to get through these last couple of questions. I nailed them at the end, nailed the landing, boom. Even I got a 6-0 from the Russian judge, but it was not easy. So brought some friends along to help out a little bit, to grease up the old mental gears a little bit here. So one of these friends is, of course, the classic Two-Hearted Ale from Bell's. The classic Two-Hearted Ale from Bell's. So much better. This is just a great beer. Just a fantastic beer. I mean, it's just listen to that. Even the listening, I don't say that very often about beers that aren't like Belgian quads or sours or very complex, crazy stuff. I'm a very, whatever with my beers, I'm very particular. So normally I'd say that about, I'd say something like that. But this is just a very well balanced beer. You can have food with it. It's just a very well made beer. It's good stuff. It's like home cooking, home barley cooking. Yeah, it's a great homage to Centennial hops. Good stuff. And I need something. And I've got another friend that he's a little shy right now. But he's with me too. Anyway, so here we go. Let's get through another 40 of these. I'm 44 for 44, I believe. So our next question is from Chris D. Bona, who is open source and public sector Google. Well, I like the fact that his given title here is a little cleaner than a lot of these guys. I'm going to add on distinguished open source and public sector, just to so it goes with everybody else. Chris DeBona, open source and public sector at Google. And Chris's last question is, will a computer ever really understand and experience human kindness? Well, you could say that right now a computer is understanding and experiencing human kindness because we all are computers, as we just found out a few questions ago with David Deutsch. We all are computers. There's a lot of computation going on. Gives rise to singing in the rain and shit, but it's all computation until it becomes qualia. So if I wanted to be hinky and a little and cheated, I could say, hey, a computer is experiencing this beer right now. And if this was in the Matrix and I was outside of the Matrix, I'd be like, yeah, just lie to me. I know that when I eat the steak, it's just a simulation, but still, anyway, you get the point. Back. Will a computer ever really understand and experience human kindness? Well, I don't know that he is meaning that to be two different things, but you could certainly make the case that a computer. Could you make the case that there's a difference between a computer understanding and experiencing human kindness? Probably could make a very solid case that those are two different things. So he's asking kind of two questions. But let's take those as one question. Let's not get too hung up on let's make it easy on ourselves and say the specific species of kindness that we want to investigate as like a compliment, something language based to make it easier. So will AI get past the point of being able to answer a question and actually be able to actually answer the question? When will an AI have the right answer to do these pants make my ass look fat? When is AI going to get the right answer to that? Well, I'm thinking the computer, whatever we want to call it here, in order for it to experience human kindness, it has to value It has to value something, so it has to value itself. It has to, because what else, how could kindness register unless it's registering as a good thing done to oneself? So you're not going to get a computer to understand or experience that until it has its own referential self-image, until it can model itself. It has to be able to have a model of itself. And it has to value something similar to it has to either have some type of goal or purpose, or by that mean it thinks that it does. If you asked it, it would say, oh yes, I have a purpose to do this. Or it would have to have an intrinsic sense of self-worth. Because the kindness has to be in relation to something, right? Like, when someone's kind to you, they are maybe giving you a compliment to build up your self-confidence, which is a good thing, to make you feel better. They are helping you to get something that you want. Doesn't do anything for them, but it helps you, and they're just doing it to help you to either further their goal or make yourself feel better. But you have to have a sense of self, and then a sense of self that is going somewhere and can't get there, or is worth something and could be worth more, which is another kind of journey. Or so it has to have a sense of self, and it has to have some type of hierarchy of value in that sense of self, because that's the only way you can be kind or unkind, or it would make sense to feel it that way as any type of agent, anything that has. So you've got to give a computer that. But also you get into, so you gotta, so let's just say those are the bare essentials. But then you're also going to say, will a computer? Now, what are you going to call a computer? I mean, literally. I mean, if you get, are the Westworld inhabitants those? Is that a computer? I mean, part of it gets into what you want to call a computer. You're going to say anything that isn't extant life on this planet, anything that we're creating out of ones and zeros and whatever. It goes back to, I think it goes back to a question I answered more towards the beginning of this, somebody in the B's, I think, who asked the question, something like, will humans ever truly be able to feel like another animal feels like, or something along those lines? I think it's the same question in a way. It's like, part of me says it's the same question, where it's like you can't in order to truly understand or stand in those shoes, we'll say, you've got to be those shoes, or you've got to be that thing that steps in the shoes. So you can only simulate it so much until you have to be the thing. That's another way to answer it. But I don't want to be sold on that. How would we know? What if you got a computer that, very complex and incredible simulation that, we talk to, and it just kind of like it understands its role in the thing, and it takes care of the cooking, and we have this back and forth. It picks up music, and then blah blah blah, and then I tell it great job at dinner tonight, and it says, well, thank you, I really appreciate that. I thought quite a bit about what to make. How the hell are we going to know if the computer really understood it or not? Like, how do you measure? What's the quantitative measure of experiencing human kindness? How would you ever measure that? The experience as occurring or not? Do you look at the fMRI of the circuit boards on this freaking thing? I mean, is that what you do? Like, how would you turn? How would you identify it? Jesus, how would you identify it in humans first? Because you can't just look at another human and say, oh, they're understanding and experiencing human kindness right now. Because first you've got to be able to conceptualize it and somehow quantize that and abstract it, or make it substrate agnostic or something that you've got to read out to say, okay, this is what human kindness looks like. So if we can translate it from the other thing, back translate it, oh, we've got a match. Because otherwise, you're never gonna know. And if you, how about, will a human ever really understand and experience human kindness? I mean, of course we do, but it's like, how can you even tell that's to some? I mean, how would you ever quantify that? How would you ever put numbers and of that around that, even for humans, and then to be able to compare? How the hell would we measure it? It gets back to the ineffable. We're always trying to f the ineffable. um, but you know, do you unsubject the subjectivity? Will a human ever really understand and experience human kindness? I mean, experience, yes, but understand? The hell does understand mean? Can I translate it into another? No. I mean, what are the different ways that you can translate an experience of kindness into, so that it can be it's like, oh, here's a JPEG of kindness, but if you just translate it and blah blah blah, and you'll get it'll turn into a movie, and then we'll turn into watercolor, and then here will be a sonata. It's kindness, and then if you just put it this way, it's in we just put it into bits, just raw bits. It's raw bits of kindness. Just, yeah, I think we'll have to take their word for it. That's what it's going to be, because we're taking our own word for it now. How do you fucking measure this? It's well, it's like all these invisible handshakes. I don't know. So we're gonna have to take our word for it. We won't be able to measure it. Probably not. But if you'd have to give the computer a sense of itself and a sense of worth, or a sense of purpose, maybe just say a sense of worth, because otherwise, who the hell are you being kind to, and how do you measure kindness? So we'll say you got to give it that, and then no. But there we go. Interesting question, Chris DiBona. Very interesting. Next one. Let's keep it going here. I am rocking and rolling. This next one is from Ralph DeBelly. DeBelly. Excuse me. He is the founder of Zurich Minds. He's a journalist, author, and he's author. We've got two semicolons and then a comma threw me. Whew. Let's try this again. Ralph DeBelly is the founder of Zurich Minds. He's a journalist, and he's author of The Art of Thinking Clearly, which is overrated. Not the book, the concept. It's probably not either. And I may be wrong, but this may be the first black and white cover portrait picture that I've come across. It's the only one I remember. So you've got that going for you, which is a good thing. Ralph DeBelly's last question is, does this question exist in a parallel universe? Well, so if we've got, how many parallel universes are we talking about? An infinity? An ever increasing infinity? Does that even make sense? It might. These mathematicians. Well, it's the way I kind of understand parallel universes is that it's every branching off of the probability of the wave function or whatever, or at least that's one. There's probably like I think there's like 15 different versions of parallel universes and reasons they could be and blah blah blah. So let's just say if it could be if you could say in a parallel universe and for any of the reasons that there might be parallel universes, that makes the bet stronger that this question exists because now you're in 19 different reasons for 19 different numbers of parallel universes, or maybe they're all infinite, or no, I don't think they're all infinite. Some of them are anyway, whatever. So that would make it more likely if you were just saying any type of parallel universe based on any of the theories that we have, or any of the theories that we haven't found yet. Well, if it was totally parallel, I guess it'd have to. If it was tangential, who knows? That's just playing. That's just playing with words, man. Okay. Um, I still think you could have the question. So now, well, Jesus Christ. I mean, would something about the question have to be a little bit different? Would there have to be some aspect that's a little bit different? One, I mean, the first question are there parallel universes? Because if there aren't parallel universes, then obviously the second part of the question doesn't even apply. If there are no parallel universes, the question could not exist in one of those other parallel universes. That goes without saying, so I'll just say it twice. It does exist, but you didn't ask it. Someone that looks like you asked it, someone that behaves like you asked it, but his picture is in color. I mean, this is obviously a question that I don't need to say much more about it because I've answered it completely and fully and correctly. That's a good one. The answer is yes, it does exist. But if you ever found out for sure, boom, everything would just go poof in a puff of logic. So the answer is yes, this question does exist in a parallel universe. But you'll never be able to prove it. next question. Oh, it's a little dry. That's a good thing. I go a little too hard at here. Next question is from P. Muralai Doraiswamy. And I know I screwed that up, but I'm trying. P. Muralai Doraiswamy, Professor of Psychiatry, Translational Neuroscience Division. That's quite the division. That's quite the division of the psychiatry department. Sweet balls, man. Okay, translational neuroscience. That's a freaking cerebellum full right there. Just those words together. Duke University Health System. His last question is, P. Muralai Doraiswamy's last question is, how will we know if we achieve universal happiness? Now, the Detroit Red Wings will win the Stanley Cup every year. Will be one of the signs of the anti-apocalypse. Universal happiness. I wonder if that's a concept that even makes sense. Can happiness be defined if it's not against something else? Can it be realized? Like, can happiness be It's like, oh, we're perfectly happy. Like, how would you know that you're perfectly happy? Oh, because when we were feeling like shit, it's like, oh shit, damn it. Like like how would you be able to even conceptualize perfect happiness if you weren't conceptualizing pain, suffering, all that at the same time, or at least, if you don't have anything to define it against, then you've got to have some way to define it against something, or you got no way to measure. And as soon as you can define it against something else, the measurement keeps you, gives you a view of that. It gives you so this question is, how will we know if we achieve universal happiness? I don't think such an entity exists. I don't think such a state exists. I'm supposed to answer it. It's not a yes or no question, it's a how question. So I'm supposed to answer it, this is the thing that would allow us to understand. I'll try and find that, but I'm also thinking universal happiness can't probably exist. It's like a round circle. If we had universal happiness, I don't know that you could distinguish that from universal sadness. Anything universal is universal, and it becomes, you can't. I'm very much of the idea that the concept itself doesn't make sense. Which is, I don't want to think that way, but if everything was total happiness, you have to measure happiness against something else. I mean, even to to humanize it and also to scientize it. It's like, the perfect amount and whatever of dopamine receptors hitting the parts of the brain that make, the smile light up, and just like if that was just hitting you 100% all of the time, you'd be like a single consciousness. You'd be a one, and you couldn't even. I don't even think you couldn't even be dreaming and have universal happiness, because even if you're in a great state and you're just like dreaming of walking along the seashore and seeing beautiful things and everything's wonderful, you're still going to have waves in that thing where it'll be great, and then you'll see that the sun's going down. It's like, oh my god, it's even better. That's more thing. But it's like you're not universal then, because things vary. I don't think that the concept makes sense. You have to be able to define something against something else. If it's a value, if it's like a value, you got to be able to define it against something else. Let's say it is possible, and we're on our way. So let's switch gears. Hey, it is possible we're on our way, but we don't know. How are we going to know when we've gotten there? What would be a good proxy for it? If the blues was no longer an art form that anyone recognized. um, if country music was only played backwards. Um, how would you measure that? How do you measure any happiness? How do you, I mean, it's an abstract concept. How do we, because even as our lifespans have gotten longer and our health has gone up and our infant mortality has gone down and our educational levels have gone up and all the great stuff that's happened in the last 500, 1,500 years, mostly the last 100 years basically, all those things have gotten objectively much better in many ways. Does that register in happiness like the way it probably should? Are we happier than we were 100 years ago? I don't know. We may be more free from pain. Are we happier? I don't think we would ever know. How will we know? I can't not think we can never know, because I got to answer, how will we know? I keep saying no and no and no and no and no. But what are the two letters on the outside? Invisible. Well, no one loser is no longer in the dictionary. Um, coming up with bad jokes, but not good ideas. Um, I'm just going to have to say, and I want to answer it. I want to answer it as a how question. But I can't. I can only answer it as universal happiness doesn't even make sense as a concept. So it is unachievable by the very definition of it, because it's like how you know draw a circle with four corners. It's just doesn't make sense. So we're never going to know because it's not a concept that even makes sense. You've got to measure happiness against something else, and the minute you do, things aren't universal. So, Pete Morelli Doraiswamy, thank you for the question. And 46 for 46. Next one. Freeman Dyson. Ooh. I love me a little Freeman Dyson. Freeman Dyson just passed away. Yeah, Freeman Dyson just passed away like a week ago. So, sir, a life well spent from what I have, from the bit I've known about you and read about you. Um, yeah, sorry to see you go, but you did a lot while you were here. Freeman Dyson was a physicist at the Institute for Advanced Study. Is that the place in Jersey that was the Einstein's place? Doesn't say. I think it is, but I'm not sure. Author, Disturbing the Universe, and Maker of Patterns. Disturbing the Universe and Maker of Patterns. Interesting. There's so many interesting book titles, I'm thinking about the book titles. Okay. Freeman Dyson's last question was. Last question takes on a whole new. Anyway, last question. Is it ultimately possible for life to bend the shape of the universe to fit life's to fit life's purposes as we are now bending the shape of our environment here on Earth? Ooh. Ooh. Would it be interesting if we're somehow already doing that and we just don't realize it? We're not consciously doing it, but there is a way that the universe works that it's like life is the life becomes the shaper. Life itself becomes the mold maker, the whatever, the Demi Moore and Ghost, Patrick Swayze. Life is that to the universe. Like this would be kind of like a pan consciousness, or one of those ideas where it's like consciousness is actually the fundamental thing, and it's creating the universe. So it's like, I don't believe that, but hey. Anyway, back to the question: is it ultimately possible For life to bend the shape of the universe to fit its own purposes. Well, then you are kind of asking, can we become engineers of the universe itself? Can we go from, it's kind of like an analogy is like, so we got Darwin and we understood, after Darwin we started to understand, oh, this is kind of how we got here. It's evolution, it's survival of the fittest, it's mutation with adaptation. Oh crap. It's like, again? Alright, I'm gonna finish this off. Whatever. So with Darwin we got, the idea of like how we got here, how the algorithm of natural selection. Basically, we got that algorithm. But then we couldn't do much with it until we discovered DNA and how that works, how it's transcribed. Now we can shape life. We can do all, we're on our path of being able to, cure disease and do all this kind of stuff with our understanding of genetics and how that works. But that took biology from being just the realm of the it took biology from the realm of the theoretician, the realm of the of just the mathematician, to make it amenable and to make it usable by the engineer. It made biology into engineering, the study, the understanding of DNA and how that works and how it turned. And now you get molecular and all that stuff. So it turned the field into engineering. The way I'm viewing this question is, can we understand the universe at such a level that we can engineer the universe? In order to suit our, blah, 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 blah. When you get down to the root level, to the C colon, that sounded weird. Well, the root drive, let's just say that. When you get down to that level, can you just alter it? Let's say, okay, galaxies shouldn't be made of this anymore because we want to be able to spread easier, so we're going to take the fundamental geometry of the universe and modify it so we can spread out without having to screw around with time, because time's a son of a bitch and we don't have to deal with entropy. So let's just, could we ask those questions if we became more knowledgeable? I think it's conceptually at least possible. It feels like, okay, once we have it, because I guess you probably can't do that without a theory of everything. So it's like, once we have a theory of everything, is that theory amenable to not only give us the starting parameters and give us a logical explanation, but also give us in it make it it itself is amenable to creating tools to modify that which it is creating. Is the universe malleable at its most fundamental level? Or is it just is, and you can only manipulate everything inside, but the universe just is? Or is it something that can actually be manipulated at that level? Well, there's a long time we didn't even know that we were bending the shape of our environment here on Earth because we just weren't even aware of it. We were just like aware of, oh, hey, fire. Oh, fire good. Keep me warm. We were not able to at all even see enough to know that we were changing anything. So then finally we get to know that we're changing things. Maybe we've changed the universe for a long time now. We just haven't realized it. Maybe the first time we put a particle accelerator together, we really were creating something new. We just didn't know it. Is it ultimately possible for life to bend the shape of the universe to fit one's purposes, as we are now bending the shape of the environment here on Earth? I mean, bending this as we are now bending the shape of our environment. That's it's a long way to go for a metaphor. I mean, I get what he's saying. So you can analogize it like, okay, it's like, can we avoid the heat death of the universe if we just, put some frickin' pliers and some elbow grease into just like, We have to modify Euclidean geometry in order to stave off the heat death. I will say, and this will become codified, and so somebody write this down, that yes, it will ultimately be possible for life to stave off the heat death of the universe, to do whatever we need to do to fit our own purposes. And it's possible that, like a long a pebble thrown into a pond, we're already doing that, and we're as ignorant now of that as we, until just recently, were ignorant about the fact that we are changing the environment here on Earth. Maybe just that that life in and of itself is fundamentally changing the universe. So there. Thank you very much. We're back. It is now past midnight, so it's technically day 7,413 of the lockdown. It's April 28 now, 2020. And we're joined by a good friend here, Bel Zambareo. I don't know if it's just me. The last couple questions have been hard to nail down perfectly well. I did it, but it's been a challenge. So let's see what we got here with the next one. Let's keep her going. I feel good about this one. This one I'm going to nail. I mean, I've nailed all of them, but this one's going to be 38 seconds. Okay. George Dyson. I know you guys want to say, yeah, he of the vacuum cleaner. No. Much more poetic George Dyson. George Dyson, who is a science, should I say, and science historian? Because of the historian and science historian? Or should I say a science historian? George Dyson, who is a science historian, author, Turing's Cathedral, and Darwin Among the Machines. And I am sorry to say I haven't read any of his stuff, but I've heard of him very, very often, and he's actually, yeah. Anyway. I don't know, these interesting humans. Lousy bastards. Okay, George Dyson's last question is, why are there no trees in the ocean? Well, there's at least one or two. I mean, come on. Even on the beaches in Oregon, there's they're almost in the ocean, a good breeze. And why are there no trees in the ocean? What does he mean by that? He might just mean, if I'm interpreting correctly, that question might just point to, him asking, why are there no trees in the ocean? What do trees do? They take in sunlight and oxygen and nutrients from the environment, turn that into more tree. Well, wouldn't they're using photosynthesis. Photosynthesis is going to be harder when there's no, or not nearly as much light, right? I mean, there still are plants in the ocean and the water that use photosynthesis, right? But aren't they mostly like right near the surface? So I don't know this. I'm guessing right now. I'm thinking, but I'm not sure. I mean, those deep down plants and stuff that's like, down in the Marianas Trench and everything, like, and a mile deep to 7 miles deep, whatever the hell it is. Are they using photosynthesis? If they are, they better be doing it really efficiently. That's where we get our solar panels from. I'm thinking that they don't use photosynthesis. So is that part of the reason? It's just there's not as much light to get, so that's why you're not using photosynthesis, so that's why you're not a tree? But what is the specific things about a tree that he's talking of? Any other? What are the characteristics of the tree that he's worried about that aren't in the ocean? Are there trees that don't use photosynthesis? I think that's kind of definitional, isn't it? Do all plants use photosynthesis? I think so. Otherwise, you wouldn't call them a plant, would you? What do you call the stuff at the bottom of the ocean? Water. So let's get away from the photosynthesis because I think he's going for somewhere else. Excuse me. What else do trees do? What else characterizes trees? They have seedlings that they spread out on their. They just spread out and drop them. They spread out and drop them, baby. Are there no plants in the ocean that do that like that? I would think that there are. In fact, I'm sure that there are species of something that use the ocean currents and there you go. I don't think that's. I think that's done in the ocean. I think photosynthesis, if it's done, is only done in very shallow waters. At least that's what I would think. I'm not sure what he's trying to ask by this. Why are there no trees in the ocean? Why have no land-bound, land-evolved trees, mutated themselves and found their way into the water, into the ocean? If that's the case, why don't we have an oak tree in the ocean? An oak tree that just, it grew up in the river and then you got in the ocean. It could be a case of almost kind of an irreducible complexity type of contraption where, say a plant. See, this is where I should know the taxonomy of the whole frickin' situation so I wouldn't make any dumb mistakes. I'm just thinking logically. I'm thinking like maybe you could have trees that go from water to land because you're getting more of a resource. And so if you set up to be a certain efficiency and then you get more of it, it isn't necessarily going to hurt you, but maybe you can evolve in a stepwise fashion to take more advantage of the increased amount of sunlight, for example. Maybe. But if you are in an area out of the ocean, if you're above ground, to evolve to get into the ocean, you've already evolved a system which is not very necessarily sensitive relative. So you can't just evolve that way because you've already built up a complex thing that is tuned to be less sensitive and less, it doesn't have to work as well. And now you're asking it to work so well that it's like you're asking something to be like 10 times better at what it is. And it's like making a saltationary leap, evolutionary, versus like one or two mutations. In order to get from shallow water to land, maybe you don't need much because you have to maybe need a little bit less water, 10% less water, and then 10% less water. But you're already getting more energy than you need or than you're used to from the sun. But to go the other way around, you're all of a sudden just going down. And you may have designed a motor which can't be more efficient because of the way it's designed. It's just like you can't. It may be just that you can evolve something to have slight changes to be more efficient, or I'm saying like slightly more efficient. Not even that. Take slightly better, make better use of the inputs, and then you get a better engine eventually, but you're just a little bit better use of the inputs. All of a sudden you've got to go, I'm used to being at this level of input and now I'm at this level and I still got to make it work. I just think it's like a saltationary leap, like but that's not even what he's asking. It was just a tangent. He's not even asking that, I don't think. Maybe he is. Maybe that's an answer. Maybe that's where you actually have a real version of like an irreducible complexity or an irreducible engine that you can't. It need to be reworked to go from this level to this level, and you can't rework it. It just, there's too many parts that are now, they can't go that way. They can go this way, but not that way. Maybe that's a real large scale version of irreducible complexity. Can't go home again. What else is there? There's probably some 9 levels that I'm not even thinking about here, which is what he's really asking. Yeah, I'm sticking with the difference in how you'd have to create those sensitive energy factories and how you can't go backwards from one to the other one. That's what I am saying with it. It's something like that. It may not actually be the energy thing, but it's just like you can't unweave that rainbow. It's become too complex and too, maybe once you get to a certain level of complexity too. Anyway, that is, I don't know. So yes, because of that. Yes. Yeah, baby. Okay, next. Um, whoops. Whoopie whoop whoop. Where are we? Where did we go? Oh, here we go. Next, we've got David M. Eagleman, who is a neuroscientist at Stanford University and author of Incognito Sum, The Brain. What is it? Cognito something Sum. I think, therefore I am. I don't think. Therefore the brain. That's probably not right, but it's not terribly off. David M. Eagleman's last question is cogito ergo sum. Yeah. Can we create new senses for humans? Can we create new senses for humans? Not just touch, taste, vision, hearing, smell, but totally novel qualia for which we don't yet have words. Wow, isn't that the kicker? Isn't that the, I mean, what are we going to call this? This ride that we're all getting on, humans are all getting on collectively here. This it's kind of like there's a new nervous system of humanity, and it's just booting up now. It's like in a way it's kind of like a collective conscious thing. But if you just think about it, it's like part of it's just like information exchange, and if you think about the universe, maybe at a root level, it is just information. So you think, at least at one, it is computation, it is whatever, but it also is just like, I think to understand the universe, you have to understand like networks and how networks just work and just, anyway, if you think about this whole thing with humans, is like we're a network, but for the most part of humanity, the network was very small and very localized, and information flow was very slow. It was you, and you were in your with your family, and you're in your little village, and that was it. And sometimes the wisdom would get passed down to all the villagers, and then like sometimes that wisdom would get passed on through a few generations, and then we invented writing so the wisdom could get spread a little bit more and a little bit to other people, and that was a big deal. And then like the nervous system kind of took a little jolt up, but then all of a sudden you got like, after radio you got like telegraph, and more people could communicate, and then like all of a sudden the books can go places without actually physically going there. They can be interpreted, and then all of a sudden you get the TV, and then all of a sudden and then you get the internet, and all of a sudden the speed limit goes to the speed of light, basically, more or less, and the information becomes more and more. Now you've got a library in your pocket, and people are communicating back and forth all over the world, and this network is increasing in speed, increasing in nodes, increasing in information, increasing in computation, and it is getting somewhere where it's going to be something that one way to think about it will be a new sense. One way to think about it will be a new consciousness. I mean, I'm not quite sure how we're going to conceptualize it, but there's something in the weeds. Anyway, so Can we create, well, if we don't have a word for it, that could, I mean, not to take him too literally, but I'm going to take him literally because, for quality for which we don't have words, if we don't have a word for it, how the hell are we going to describe it? How the hell are we going to be able to spring it into being if we don't have a label for it, if we don't have a, and certainly how are we going to communicate it to anybody else? It's like, oh yeah, we've got taste, touch, and then this thing, which, I don't have a name for it, but you know what I'm saying. So it's hard to, it's hard to make that invisible unicorn appear until at least you can call it an invisible unicorn. But let's say that's just semantics, and literally semantics. And there's another quality, and it's some kind of combination of vision and smell. Hey, it's the sense that what is it, synthesiacs, whatever. What's their, is it whatever, where it kind of gets crossed a little bit, or they numbers have smells, and so there's a very, what do you call that? I mean, we call it a disorder, but it's also, it's a shortcut to certain types of creativity that most people never would see. Well, by that thinking of it or definition, certainly, because, I mean, certain people over time have had different ways of seeing things just because their neurons got crossed differently than the way it commonly works, and so excuse me, you get their optic nerve crosses like the synthesia. You get optic nerve crosses with a language nerve, it crosses with something. So, every time you say the word dog, you see the number 7. And I know that sounds weird, but that's just the kind of stuff that goes on. What the hell kind of sense is that? Is that just a combination sense, or is that something new? I mean, so maybe there might be a million other ways just to kind of like make the neurons interact, even in the brain. Just keep it to the brain, but just kind of weave that stuff in and out, and create new combinations of stuff, like at least new colors, like you call. Think of hearing as brown, and vision as yellow, and touch is pink, and it's like you can make all the different flavors between that, where it's like, and that might even actually be somewhat possible with just kind of like bad plumbing, or anormal plumbing in the old so yeah, we can create them by accident, and we'll label them disabilities. How about create them out of just like, let's think of something. Let's think of something, and then put a name on it, and then create it. I'm trying to imagine, besides the combination of what there is, how would a sense of acute, like, not just a general sense of time passing, but like literally like you are totally aligned, Like there's a sense organ in you that literally just space is time. Like it does a every second. So it's literally it's not on your beat. It is on time. There's something that's just beating with time. That would be like a new sense, right? We'll call it Flauba. So it's Flauba. It's that thing where it's that bodily interfaced with time itself. That's that interface with time that's always like, telling you exactly what time it is all the time. So could we create that? Sure. But if a sense is never changing or it's so constant that it's just something like the time, can you really dare to call it a sense because it's just too uniform to be really a sense? Senses get activated and deactivated. If you're just talking about the time, that's not a sense. Even if it's a variable feeling it, it's still just like a times a trillion times. That's not a sense. Hmm. Could we create something whole cloth? I mean, I think we've shown we can make mixtures, but could we create something whole cloth? I mean, how would we think of it? I mean, how are our senses built? They're the combination of the type of interface to, I'll just call it reality for now. Sensors, and processing. Sensors plus processing equals the senses, plus the virtual reality movie that you put in your head. The sensors plus the processing of those sensory inputs, excitations, whatever. So, can we create new processing? Sure. How would we know how to create a new sensory organ? What would be I mean, what would be the parameters around which you create a sense? Sense of sight, eye, optic nerve, a lot of processing running around the brain. Sense of taste, you got the receptors on the tongue and nerves going back, and it's so eye works with electrons. tongue works should we say, on a more or much less granular level, or at least at a larger scale, because we're going to work with like molecules and things like what has specific tastes and stuff. I think it's, for the most part, it's more complex things than just photons. Okay. Hearing is sound waves, which is a form of energy. Touch is matter plus processing. So is it that the number of senses is bounded by the categories of, or the number of ways to, Christ, how do I say this? It's like photons, electrons is like one angle into the universe, and sound energy is another angle into the universe. But there's only so many, like there's the electromagnetic spectrum, and there's the periodic table, and there's, all the physics about photons, but there's only so many, back doors into that. So the number of senses, I think, are kind of bounded by the number of kind of like, we'll call the number of ways to investigate what we're calling reality. So we may be able to create additional senses when we've discovered that there is another back door or two for which we can understand reality. So that might be it might be like we've got height, width, and depth, and time are our dimensions. There's two more dimensions. We don't have names for them because we haven't really discovered them, but we will discover them. They are there. And when we discover them, that will enable one to have a sense in that new direction, potentially. Although we don't have senses for all the... Quit arguing against yourself. Yeah, I think there is something to that. We need another interface, another way, and we need to discover that through one of these frickin' theories actually working. But we're hamstrung because we're only thinking in terms of biology is so dumb. So the answer to the question, David M. Eagleman, your last question, can we create new senses for humans? Not just touch, taste, vision, hearing, smell, but totally novel qualia for which we don't yet have words. Depending on when if you want to call like the synesthesia, I think it is, or people have the conditions where they're cross-wired and stuff, and it seemed to be like a new sense. Like maybe it isn't. Maybe you just call it a cross of it, but it seems like that's a new sense. But on the other context, yes, but we need the interface first. We're probably not going to get the interface, the sensor, until we have figured out a deeper layer of reality that we're not seeing right now. And that will open up a door for a sense to be realized, because we got a wall to put a door onto. So 47 for 47. One more. Thank you, David Eagleman. David Edelman. In no relation to David Eagleman, except for we're all related and they have the same first name and almost the same last name. And they're both neuroscientists. I don't know. David Edelman is a neuroscientist and a guest investigator at Dartmouth College. And it's 2 a.m. David Edelman's last question is, will we ever be replaced by another earthly species capable of evolving to a similar degree of social and technical sophistication that effectively fills the biocultural niche we vacated? That's a mouthful of words. Okay. Will we ever be replaced? I'm going to go. Well, he's saying capable of evolving to a similar degree of blah, 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 blah. He doesn't say has evolved or did evolve or whatever evolved. He's saying capable of evolving. So, could the zombie apocalypse happen? And then the soulless Night of the Living Dead walking around, beat it, thriller. Could somehow develop a conscience and, want to eat vegan and slowly evolve to a point where they become us after we left and fill the biocultural niche we vacated. I mean, well, the question could be, that could be a little tongue-in-cheek or a little, I don't know, winking at you or something like that, because another earthly species capable of evolving to a similar degree of social and blah, blah, blah. I mean, I think he's saying no because of earthly, but I just feel like it's like, I could see kind of like I'm not trying to be dystopian, but kind of like AI integrating itself with us to such a degree that we could be seen as another earthly species, but not necessarily as human, and then the AI kind of like having its own um, Lazarus moment, or its own just like it it becoming it doing the whole Westworld thing, where it's just like boom, but it's like they were already in kind of in our like the big super freaking super consciousness that's all happening right now with the internet and all this kind of crap. That thing is like all of a sudden that thing's in our head, but it's just a thing in our head until it's more of our head than we are, and until it's just like I don't know if this is what he's getting at, because it sounds like he's not getting at this, but it makes me think about the idea that just AI could be so integrated with us that there's just a point and nobody sees the point, but it's just like the point where it's like, who the hell is even in charge of this meat sack anymore? Like it's so I can see something like that coming. I don't know that he's getting at that idea or something else. Because this is capable of evolving. Biocultural niche. He could also just be meaning like, let's say we all kill each other out. Let's say, let's put it in a much nicer way. Let's say a virus takes all the humans out in like 9 days or something. So we've got, and okay, so then, but chimpanzees are fine. So now all of a sudden, well, here's an idea. It's like all of the stuff would work except for if it just wears down because of entropy or whatever, but otherwise it's just functional. Like we killed each other because of a virus, but technology is just waiting to be discovered. And you've got the chimpanzees. At first I was tempted to say, wouldn't it be interesting that they would have to almost rediscover the same technologies in somewhat of the same order, because otherwise they wouldn't be able to operate a computer, because they wouldn't know how to operate a computer. But they could, there's something that just was just based on fire, that you could do that. And then I thought, no, because there may be technologies that the way that they're implemented, all you got to do is hit the on switch. It depends on how automated the system is. Could be incredibly highly automated and complex, and they could stumble on it day one, and at least it might be, yeah, they just look at it as God. Maybe they never go from the step of like, oh, fire, okay, that makes sense now. What can we do with fire? Oh, okay, makes sense. Maybe if it's just they go there and they're just like, okay, that's just God, and that's it. They get all Islam, 13th century. That's it. We're not going to try to explain anything. I just turned on the nuclear reactor that gives power, and now I'm watching TV. I don't know what TV is, but I'm watching it. That would be an interesting thought experiment. What happens if it's just ready to turn the switches on, but then they don't have any of the conceptual, the mental, They have none of that thing. How soon could they get that if they were just like given the huge potential rewards? Would that skew the old evolutionary landscape? That's that's a fitness landscape with some peaks right there. So David Edelman, not Eagleman, still neuroscientist. I would say no, but it would make a very good series to follow up Westworld on HBO. Hubbo. Good question. Thank you. All right, see if we can get through the E's. Let's take a look here. Nick Enfeld, professor and chair, Department of Linguistics, University of Sydney, author How We Talk. All right, so he's a language guy. The limits of my language are the limits of my reality, but they aren't. That's not true. Nick Enfield's last question is the accumulation of shared knowledge forever constrained by the limits of human language? Well, I don't know about forever. I'll think about that in a moment. It certainly is at the time. It definitely is at the time. Well, if we make an analogy to the fact that there's many languages spoken on the earth right now, and there's a lot of people that don't speak most of the languages, and so the accumulation of shared knowledge is constrained by that constraint. So as we get more language and translators, interpreters, and they get real time, that will break down that barrier to the accumulation of shared knowledge. So then let's say everybody speaks English, or it doesn't have to be English, it could be any language, because you can just translate them all, because everyone will, all the language will be, we'll say, translatable in real time, and there's not that many words that are like, only one language has a little interpretation for. Let's just get by those right now and just say everybody knows English, so everybody can talk to each other. So that's breaking down the constraint. But then everybody knows English, but English can't tell you everything. Even if there was a put it this way, the limits of my language are the limits of my ability to communicate my reality, or communicate in general, and very specific. The limits of my language are the limits of my ability to communicate, except for when I'm communicating that way. But anyway, well, shared knowledge. What is shared? Shared knowledge is communication plus information. So I didn't say a whole lot new there. But could you have a language that even could just one language that could encapsulate all knowledge. I mean, fucking Claude Shannon might have a problem with that. I don't think he would know what we were talking about. I'm saying yes because you've got to share it. Even if everybody spoke English, there's so much you can't say in English. There's so much I couldn't. It's what's between the notes. It's the jazz of the whole thing. It's the it's that thing in poetry where it's just like it's more than the words. I mean, it's what the words create, but it's not just in the words. It's around it. Mm. So could we get around? I think it has to do with so it's like language is a I just think like language is like the mathematics of the soul or something like that. It is like this idea of it's like it's the prose of it. It's of course it's the prose because it is, but it's there are things that are so pure to their senses, to your senses. Like there are visual things that are so purely visual and so that to put it into language is to bastardize it, to defeat the entire purpose of it, to much more than unweave the rainbow, but to there are things that are so specific, tastes that are so like to put words around it isn't going to get it because they are so laser sharp focused on a particular sense, vision, and that the language can't get there because it can't describe the experience because the experience is so fundamentally part of the sense, the language can't touch it. So I think yes, I think subjectivity is there's an element of subjectivity which is not amenable to language whatsoever, and it finds its home in the most amazing visual things that you can just putting words on them is just it's just useless. It's just not there. So the answer to that is yes, but don't let it stop us from trying to say no. Brian Eno. Brian Eno is an artist, composer, of course, recording producer for everybody in the world. U2, Coldplay, Talking Heads, Paul Simon, recording artists, very we're not screwing around here. Brian Eno's last question is, have we left the age of reason never to return? I don't know where he's going with that. Although I mean, there's many ways to go with that, but I would want to know exactly what he means by the age of reason. I mean, I want to genuflect back to the like the Enlightenment and the scientific method, the idea that we don't have to look up for answers, that we can look around us to find answers. The so all that type of stuff, where the scientific method became more formalized and more, and the ascendancy of the scientists as the new clergy in some way, which I'm putting in religious terms. It doesn't have to be put that way. It just means that someone new had the answers, and the answers were procured by a dedication to the principles of reason and scientific deduction and argument and that type of stuff, and that's how we get to understand the world. That's how we get to make sense of the world. That's how we get to make decisions about politics and life things and stuff like that. Is that the age of reason? Was there ever really an age of reason if you define it that way? I mean, I don't blame them for thinking that. I wonder if that's kind of a natural reaction among certain species of humans. That species of humans. I wonder if certain people just, because I feel where he's coming from. That's a new quality. That's a new sense. I feel where he's coming from. You look at the shit going on, and you're just like, none of you people are. I mean, you're not even thinking. Like you're not. Not even, no, none of this. But I wonder if that is something that maybe 7% of every generation thinks because of just the combination of situations that they're in and the way that they think in general. And as you get a little bit older, you've seen things go around and around, so you think everybody is seeing things go around and around, and they haven't all seen things going around and around, so they're just like, oh, it's going around, and they're just going like this, and you're like, why are you doing this? This is what this does. So I mean, maybe that's just the way you're supposed to feel at this point in your life. I don't think. Hmm, you know what? If we had, there's a way in which you could actually say it's a good thing, and I'm just going to say it. I'm just going to put it out there. And reason and logic, the scientific method, all these things are great things to improve upon life, to discover truths about the universe, and you know do all these things that have helped, I think, in a lot of ways, and extended lifespan and all that kind of stuff. But also like helped us to get better and get to a better place and get to a higher thing. If we have left that as a dominant paradigm for how we think about the world, it may just be that the world has become easy enough that we don't have to think that way. That it's opened up kind of the the whatever because it's got so good that if we the penalties for not thinking rationally and in terms of skepticism and things like that, the penalties aren't there as much just because the penalties for whatever are not that bad, because it's just like, oh crap, you only get a microwave and decent Wi-Fi. You don't get 250 megabytes per second, whatever. I mean, maybe we could afford to leave the age of reason. I'm just throwing it out there. I don't know. I don't agree with anything I said. It just might be the case. Um, I would also say, though, if what I just said is true, the part about we can afford to leave the age of reason, I don't think that lasts forever, no matter where you are, just because of we're likely then to do something very stupid that will jolt us back into, at a very large 50,000 foot societal level. If we can just give up reason for a little bit, we're likely to be jolted back at some point. That probably will not be comfortable. Then again, we might not be us for much longer, and we might not get jolted back to anything. It might just be swimming in the cloud. And who gives a shit about reason when you're swimming in the cloud? I just want to see pretty colors and make new senses, and reason got no reason to live. I don't know. Interesting question. Thank you, Brian Eno. I got one more in this. Let's try here. Is this, oh man, I wanted to get through the E's. I'll try one more here. Juan Enriquez, Managing Director, Excel Venture Management, co-author with Stephen Goulin's Evolving Ourselves. Interesting. Juan Enriquez's last question is, so, before the singularity. Oh, so I get it that my idea is that he's kind of like it's the mirror of what was the moment after the Big Bang, or the first moment we can measure. This would be the mirror opposite of that, of like the last very second before the singularity. Before all is one and one is all, what was the moment right before that? All was almost one and one was almost all. Two? I feel like the number of dimensions would just collapse. I don't think this is probably what he's asking about, but you know what? Hey, he wasn't specific. I feel like kind of like the numbers of dimensions on which whatever it is that is expressed that becomes the singularity. It collapses in terms of its dimensions or its degrees of freedom. I hope it had a chance to see Mount Fitzroy before Fitzroy would no longer exist, because it'd be part of the singularity, right? And so it wouldn't have its own. That would suck, because Fitzroy is beautiful. I must be tired because this seems tough for me. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm still gonna nail this one, but it'd be like an episode of Knight Rider. Where you had David Hasselhoff, and then you had Kit, this trusty Trans Am slash smart car. And then you had like the anti-Kit. Was it Cat? I don't know, but you had Kit versus Cat, and then David Hasselhoff. And Kit right before they just run into each other. So the moment just before the singularity, that vista, that landscape, is nothing but David Hasselhoff. Okay, thank you, Juan Enriquez. Dylan Evans, founder and CEO of Projection Point, author of The Utopia Experiment. I'm of the mind that utopias are impossible, and and those that think they are possible make me nervous. But Dylan Evans does not make me nervous. Okay, well, his question does. Dylan Evans' last question is, will civilization collapse before I die? Isn't that prescient? She puts the lotion on the skin. I don't think civilization is going to collapse. Call me old-fashioned. Call me a romantic. I'll put it this way. I think if it ends, it's going to end with a bang, not with a whimper. I mean, if civilization collapses, it's because we somehow started a black hole and just wiped everything out. It's not going to be because we just went internecine warfare and I mean, we'll have to do something that just wipes everybody out in 20 minutes. I don't think that we're going to just. I know it sounds Pollyannish, but I don't think that we're gonna kill ourselves slowly. It's either going to be quick or we're going to make it to the next stage, in which we may not be human, but the civilization will still be there. That's how I think. Well, on the other hand, how much thought have I put into the phrase "before I die"? Because this guy could live a long time. We could get to that point where we're adding a more. I mean, it's possible. It's not likely, very unlikely, but it's possible we could get to the point where we are adding. Every year we're adding more than a year onto the expected lifespan of humans. I mean, hey, we go haywire on the CRISPR and everybody becomes super healthy and yada yada yada. Before you know it, everybody's living to longer and longer and longer. So will civilization collapse before the heat death of the universe? I mean, I would bet on you dying before civilization collapse. I will only say this though. Diversify. You should always have gold and precious metals as part of your portfolio. You just never know. And if you want to get some gold, you can buy from Gold Star Funds. They've been around since 1964. They're AAA rated by the anyway. So thank you, Dylan Evans. One more. Daniel L. Everett, linguistic researcher, another language guy, Dean of Arts and Scientists at Bentley University, author. How language began. His question is, will humans ever embrace their own diversity? Well, kind of no by definition. I mean, Well, here's the thing. Here's the rub. Depends how you're defining diversity, but kind of in a way it doesn't, because from a biological perspective, and we're getting away from biology a fair amount, and we're getting bigger than that, so that's cool. But just to root it for a moment in biology, a species is a thing because it makes itself a thing. It's not looking to make itself a thing, but like a species is like that which mates with itself and doesn't eschew onto this or this. It's like it does this thing. So it mates with the humans, these people. So to say we'll embrace our own diversity, it's kind of like you're saying, will humans ever decide to go off in directions that aren't what we call human? Because if you called something, all this diversity, also human, then you wouldn't be able to go somewhere biologically. So that's a very gene-centered, evolutionary-centered view of that question. We are getting past that, and we are, at least in some ways, increasing our circle of acceptance and our circle of just like seeing the beauty that can come in the way it's like the mental ecosystem. It's like we don't want to kill off these different these species, because you never know how they could have benefits for us or whatever. And it's the same way if you think about just how different brains work and how they're wired and stuff like that. It's like, obviously you don't want somebody with an axe just willy-nilly killing some people, but there are so many different potential things that we can gain, and things of beauty and things whatever from all these different brains. And so I do think that in a way we are becoming more accepting of diversity. It's just that like there is always that constant biological kind of tug of just to say, well, you don't want to just, the other way to think about it is, because we've been tied to biology, if you embrace a certain diversity that doesn't work in terms of procreational mathematics, it's a dead end. Now again, we're getting away from some of that stuff, but just in the past, it's just been like a dead end. It's just like, okay, well, that's very diverse, but if you're not going to have any kids, that's a short term, that's a short twig. It's a short and incredibly decorated twig on the branch, but you're not going anywhere. So there is a fundamental self-limiting principle in evolution, in biology, that wants us to prune away the thing and just be like, okay, well, this is the right amount of diversity right here. But we're getting away from that, and we are, I think, opening up in a way. I think we are getting to the point where we can allow for a larger variation in how brains work and how this stuff coalesces, and the beauty of people just think differently, and it's not necessarily a threat anymore. And part of that is because the risks of losing are not, I'm not talking about for the people that are diverse. I'm talking about for the, if you're in this group and you're trying to survive, and you do things this way, and all of a sudden somebody comes around and they're like, oh no, all that's wrong how you're thinking. It's like, you got to do this way, and you're like, you've been surviving on doing it this way, and you got to be incredibly suspicious about this person that says it's all wrong, because if he convinces somebody that everything is fucked. But fast forward a few hundred years, and it's not life and death if you change something. It's just you'll experience something new, but you'll still be able to get food and water and all that kind of shit. So then that person that's more diversified, whatever, can come in, and you'll just be like, well, what happens if I follow him and it doesn't work after 3 weeks? It's like, oh, I didn't lose my 4 pounds, or I didn't have the spiritual awakening, but I'm still fine and I'm still okay. So that in and of itself, the easing of, you know, the ability just to live in the world and survive encourages its own diversity, because the selection pressure isn't as hard, and the cost for the false positive of leading to something better, like, oh, I think it might lead to something better. Oh no, boom, he was wrong. In the past, you're dead. Now you're a little less happy, so the costs are lower. So we're getting there because the ecosystem is becoming more amenable to embracing diversity. You have to have the right ecosystem set up that will allow for the embracement of diversity. That's my answer, Daniel L. Everett. Thank you for the question. That's the end of the E's. You know what? I am going to stop here because we're to the S. A, B, C, D, E. A, B, C, D, E. That's 26 letters. 5 times 5, 19.27%. And I've gotten them all correct so far. I'm almost 20%. No, it's 24 point. I'm almost 25%. I'm almost a certain percent, and I've gotten them all right. This is amazing. I'm very happy about myself. Anyway, I'm tired. Que bueno. Que Sorrento. Hasta luego.